Welcome to the podcast, Badass Mother Hustler, where the grit, stress, and the beauty of motherhood and entrepreneurship meet. We'll share the realities and stories of what it takes to make it all work and still be a badass mother. Now here's your host, Maddie Yaka.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 2. Today, I have with me a badass mother hustler, Allie Mazza, and she is the owner of Brandywine Concierge Senior Services and mother to Joey, who's 3.5. Thanks for coming on.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. I think that's the first time I've ever been called badass. Like hearing you say it doesn't even feel right, but I'm so honored to, especially to be your second episode. Like, love it.
Thanks. I mean, you're a mom boss, so you're a badass. Being a mom and a boss and just trying to do it all is pretty badass.
You're right. It is. It's just not something I come across regularly that people are calling me it, but I am honored to be called it.
Well, we're giving it a new meaning because sometimes it's, come off as, oh, you're doing something really bad. But I'm thinking of badass as super cool.
And like reimagining how something could be, like I think, not to like go on a tangent, but I think so often we're told that you can either be like an entrepreneur or you can be a mother. And I love like listening to who you're interviewing and meeting the people that you've introduced me to that are like, no, wait a second. You're not going to tell me I can be one or the other. I'm going to figure out a way to be both. And I think there's nothing more badass than being like, no, I'm actually going to invent this for myself.
And so when I met you at the park last week with our kids, you brought up a phrase that I thought, oh my gosh, why didn't I ever think of this before? You said that we mom hack as business owners.
We did. We've like figured out. It's so inspiring to meet other moms. And there's a lot of them like locally that are like figuring out a way that they can be both. Like, and I kind of hate the word. I'm so glad you didn't call it like mompreneur because I don't think that's fair. I hate it when I see that word because I'm like, wait a minute, you don't have to just have this like new fusion title. You can actually be both things. You can be an entrepreneur and you can be a mom and you can own both of those titles at the same time. You don't have to be like some hybrid. You can be both of those people. All of us have multiple facets to who we are. And it's so interesting to figure out or to meet people and like figure out how they structured their life so that they can do both things. It's like, it's so inspiring and refreshing for sure.
It's just so interesting to like when we were standing at the park and I was talking to you and I said, well, how do you structure your type of work, which we'll get into, I guess, turning that route. Can you tell everyone, well, before we talk about your business, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about your family and like what your hobbies are?
Yeah. And just like one more thing is I think what was also so nice to be with you at the park is like for so many women that I meet to be so real about it and be like, yeah, it's like freaking hard. Like some days I don't know how I'm going to structure my day and figure it out. Like, right now Joey's napping so that I can talk to you. And like, we worked that out, but there are days where you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to balance this? So did you just ask me about my family?
Well, now I kind of want to go off what you said, where being real, growing up as the oldest of 8 in such a large family, you can't be fake. You're going to get called out. Not that any of us are fake, but you just have to be real. And I also just feel like I'm real on Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff, because there's enough fake people out there. You got to show people that it's not all easy. It's completely real and raw.
And people see through things that are not authentic. So if you are trying to build a business and your business is you, like your business is you, and same here, like, my business is called Brandywine Concierge, but I can't tell you how often people forget what my business is called and just tag me. And that's so fine with me. When your whole business is also you, if you're not authentic, it's never going to work. Like it has to come from a good place. It has to be authentic and it has to be with the right mission. I told somebody the other day, I was with another mom and I was like, she's also an entrepreneur. We were kind of like comparing notes. And I said, I do a lot of free work. Like people call me thinking that my business is all sorts of things. And I know we're going to get into what it actually is, but they think it's all sorts of things. And rather than being like, oh no, that's not what I do, I look at myself as like, and it's on one of my vision boards over here. Probably all of my vision boards have this.
Vision board.
How many do you have in? I've got the last 5 years. And then there's year 6 years ago over there. But on each one, it says, be a resource, not a sales pitch. Because I think when somebody calls you, if you are a pitch, it's so obvious. People aren't dumb. And if you can just be a resource, it's not that you're like just doing the right thing. Of course you are, but in a much more like literal business minded sense, doing the right thing is part of your brand. So yeah, I do a lot of free work, but that's actually my marketing dollars. So I was telling this mom, I was like, I really don't spend hardly anything on marketing. Here and there, I'll do a Facebook campaign, but they don't tend to work that well. And here and there, I'll like sponsor something, but I don't do a lot of like ads at all, because my ad is, you call me, I'm not going to charge you for anything. And whether I benefit from it financially or not, I'm going to connect you to the right resources, and I'm going to listen, and I'm going to try and help. And that is the best marketing money you can spend, because your time is money. So if you put your time into connecting and building a brand that is authentic, there's no better marketing than that, especially when it's when what you do is local, like what you do and what I do, So
yeah, I mean, people want to work with people they know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
So you got to be authentic, like you said.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, that was such a tangent, but
I love it.
You inspired me. I was thinking about it, and I just get so energized by being around people that are like similarly minded, so it's really, really cool.
It's good energy. And that's why I wanted to start this podcast. I had looked up on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I just kind of searched the phrase mother hustler, and there were a handful of these types of shows, but there were maybe 3 episodes, or it was from like 3 years ago. And I just felt like no one's talking about
That's a different world too. Like 3 years ago, we were living in a COVID world, and your business had to look really different than it looks now too. And even motherhood looked so different back then. It's interesting that those wouldn't have had legs and worked really well, because I think I'm meeting so many, and I might just be like the circles that I run in, but I'm meeting so many moms that are doing it, like hustling, or however you want to. I saw something the other day that was like, it said the word hustle. It might even be, did I put it on something? It said the word hustle, and then it had it crossed out, and it said align. And I'm like, that's cool, because that is really what we're doing. Like, yeah, it is a hustle. Like some days there are like, you and I probably both are up after bedtime doing kids' bedtime, doing work. That's a hustle. But more than anything, it's like aligning priorities and aligning your mission with like-minded people and businesses and programs and all that kind of stuff. But I'm surprised that there wouldn't have been a better response, especially 3 years ago, because that was like such a challenge during COVID to figure out either one, and especially both.
Maybe people did it as like a hobby, and then they got back to having to go to the office, and we're like, oh, I'm done.
Right, probably.
But so tell everyone a little bit about your family, then tell us like where your business stemmed from.
Okay. Yeah. I can kind of probably fuse those together, because everything comes back to senior care for me. So I went to Westchester undergrad and grad. And when I was in graduate school, I was studying, I was kind of aiming to go into training and development. Like I really liked working with people and that kind of stuff, but I wasn't completely sure. Like you don't really know when you're 22, like what you're going to do. And I was working on campus for a summer and responded to an ad on like Craigslist for a companion caregiver for a gentleman that lived in Westchester. And I was like, I could probably do that. The schedule looks pretty easy. It doesn't sound like it requires a lot of work. Let me just see what it's all about. And got placed in this gentleman's home and was his companion, not like living with him. But I would go in a few days a week and just do companion care. I did transportation, some ADL assistance, like activities of daily living, toileting and stuff, that kind of thing, but not a lot. I really, really liked him, and I really, really liked that job. And it was kind of unlike most of the things I'd done before. So I went back to school in the fall, and my schedule changed, and I would send my friends in. I started to like staff his case. It was a different era, and like that would not probably fly anymore. But I was
I'm just kind of like, you found a job on Craigslist.
I know, right? Like that's
and like it wasn't a creep.
And it wasn't like he posted it on Craigslist. It was through an agency, but like that agency would never there was like no screening. Like it was what's the happy accident? It was like serendipity that I ended up there because nowadays I don't think that would happen. But I would send my friends in there and they'd come out and be like, what are you talking about? He's like grouchy old dude. Like, I don't want to go back in there. And I was like, I like him. And I was like, well, maybe there's something to this. So I was applying for all different kinds of jobs that kind of like in that training and development field. My undergrad was psych, my master's is communications. So like you couldn't pick two more generalizable degrees, right? And I was like, well, maybe there's something to like this senior living or senior space. So I started looking at jobs in that industry, and I had told myself I was actually recruited by Epic Systems, which does like software for hospitals. And I was going to move out there to Wisconsin if I didn't find something else by, I want to say it was like October 1st or something. And October 1st, I got an offer to be an activities director at a community in Maryland. So I moved down to Maryland to open this brand new community. And the first week there, our team gets to take a tour like of the construction site that's going to become this assisted living community. And I meet the superintendent there. And I don't know if that was his title at the time, but whatever. And it's my husband. So
Yay.
Obviously, yeah, my mom did a speech at our wedding and she was like, most couples like hope to end their romance in assisted living, and Allie and Mike started theirs there. So my husband works for Harkins Builders that builds a lot of senior living communities, not exclusively, but he's done several projects that are senior living, and that's where we met. So since we got married in 2017, and very soon after moved up here to Kennett. We were living in Maryland. And we've been here since I think January of 2018 in Kennett Square. And just like, I can't say enough good things about Kennett Square. This is like to highlight the importance of a good realtor that understands who you are, like you do, that we were like set on Westchester. When we were coming up here, we were like, nah, don't really want to look at Downingtown. Nah, don't really want to look at blah, blah, blah. And our realtor was like, can I just say something? I think you guys are Kennett people. And I was like, well, I don't know what that means. And he's like, just trust me. And he was right. He was right. Like, he spent the time to get to know us. He was like, this is the town. And I sort of like, I think of him a lot because that's kind of what I try to do when people call me and they're looking for a community. They're like, well, my neighbor really had her mom here and she loved it. And I'm like, yeah, but I think your mom is whatever.
Yeah.
There's something to getting to know your client, like that seeking first to understand kind of thing. And we've been in Kennett ever since, and I just can't imagine having a business anywhere else and being like as supported as I've been here. I say it all the time that like if we had stayed in Maryland, there'd be no way that I could be doing what I'm doing. Of course, there are people that do what I do other places, but the support that I've gotten from Kennett and like Chester County is just unmatched. I'm like so grateful. So you want me to kind of like explain what my business is?
So, yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, people are kind of hearing that it has to do with older people, with
Right.
seniors.
Yeah.
And so you were working in the senior space for a little bit.
I
and
was.
when we
Most
were
of
at
my
the
career, yeah. So I worked as an activities director for 4 years maybe. And then I went to home care for a while and I did marketing for home care. Then after that, so that would have been like, I don't know, probably 7 years about 7 years after home care, I did senior living sales. So you'd go into a senior living community and you meet with a sales director. That was me. And I loved that job and I was really good at that job. But what I didn't love is that if I had and it's usually an adult daughter, it's just, what happens. If I have an adult daughter come in and she's meeting with me and she's telling me about her mom, if I felt like, wow, her mom sounds like she would love it down the road at the community, whichever, I wasn't allowed to say that.
Yeah.
So sometimes, I had to sell them what I had. And sometimes that wasn't the right fit. There are a lot of great communities in our area, but just because it's great doesn't mean that it's great for that person. Each one has a different vibe, just like different gyms have different vibes or different schools have different vibes. And you want to find the one that's right for your kid. Finding the right senior living community is not just about like staffing ratios, clean building. It's about a lot of things. And I think the most important one is probably the culture there. So I couldn't sell, I had to sell to the person my product. And it kind of made me feel icky. And I had a lot of people come in throughout the years and be like, oh, this is so overwhelming. Like, why isn't there somebody that like walks you through this process the way that like a realtor does when you're buying your first home? Because if you think about when you're looking for a community, a senior living community, usually, not always, but most of the time, it's a family member doing the legwork for their mother, father, both, whatever. And that means that not only is it like a very big financial decision, but it's also entangled with all this like family dynamics and role reversals and power struggles and communication things they don't want to talk about. And it's just so complicated. Plus, it signals to a lot of people like the last chapter, which has a lot of attached baggage to it. And like, I'm all for like anything we can do to kind of like shift that, because I think that, yeah, maybe it's the last chapter, but it could be like your final act. And that could be a whole lot of things. And you could still have, or might have even more agency and things that inspire you. Like,
yeah, it could be like freaking amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing instead of some depressing.
But if we put ourselves in the residents' shoes or like our family members' shoes, not only are we moving to like definitely a smaller space, but we're now living with people we don't know, which we haven't done since probably college. We are giving up a home that maybe we raised our children in. We've probably recently given up the ability to drive or the decision to drive. Maybe our body is failing us in ways that are like obvious to us or to other people. Our cognition might be failing. So there's all these signifiers. And I think for a lot of people, moving to a senior living community feels like one of the biggest ones you can have. And the other thing is that the generation that lives in senior living right now didn't have the type of communities that we have now back when their parents were looking. Yeah. So when their daughter goes to them and says, I want to show you a few senior living communities, they're picturing nursing homes of the, 50s or whatever, when their parents would have been going through it. And it's so different. So, there's a lot of like hurdles to get over. But people were kind of saying, like, why isn't there somebody to guide us through this? Like, even just guide us through, like, having the conversation, or what are the options, or how do you finance it? And I was like, you know what, I've heard this enough times. I want to be that person.
You're like, so, this is a sign.
I was coming home so often and I was frustrated, and like nothing against the community that I was in at the time. It was more just like, how there's a certain energy that you have to have as an entrepreneur. And it's like, for me, at least, it's like a really high level of commitment and like wanting to do it in a creative and specific way. And when you're not given either the freedom to do that, or like you have to align with like company protocols, it's tough because you have so much creative energy and you have such a high expectation for your own performance. So it's like, if you see other people around you that don't have that, or if you see that you can't be as creative as you want to be, I would just come home and I'd be like, I think I could do this. I think I could do this. And finally I was like, I want to do this. And I did it. So I quit that community, and I started, the day I quit, I called on my way home somebody that had like reached out on Facebook, just because I guess someone had said like, oh, you should talk to Allie or whatever. And I was like, do you still have some questions? Can I come over and do a consultation tomorrow? So I was like, I needed to kind of like get the ball rolling, whether it was like small steps or big steps. So I had my first client consultation the day after I quit my like corporate job. And so I came home, I like filed my LLC. I'm like, let's put together a logo and like, let's just get it going. Because I think sometimes I think the thing that holds people back on starting a business is the momentum. Like, I don't know how to take the first step. Just do it imperfectly. Don't let perfection be the enemy of done, So
it's like too much thinking. People just think too much.
Like we were saying, be authentic. Go in there and be like, you're actually my first client. So I'm here to learn. Like, I'm here to hear what you need so that I can kind of like structure it that way. And I just haven't stopped since. So Brandywine Concierge, I picked that name because I want it to be vague. So people, when they call me, don't necessarily know what I do. And that's on purpose, because I want people to call me as though I'm a concierge at a hotel. And like, you need this, let me show you, like, let me connect you to someone that does that. You need this, I got somebody to help you with that, or I can answer that question. The way I love money.
That's such a great idea. Like, what was the thought process behind? Were you guys just like sitting around a kitchen table one night and we live in the Brandywine Valley, or like how did you come up with that?
Well, I wanted local. Like, I wanted something that signified local and something that signified you call and you'll get a step closer. And I think concierge to most people means that. Like, it's like a help center, but a word that's like a little bit more upscale
A
than just like
bougie help
helpline. Yeah, it's a
center.
little bougie, right? And then Brandywine, I think, is generalizable enough that like I can serve Delaware and people know Brandywine. I can serve Pennsylvania and people know that you're basically Chester County local. But again, I didn't want to pigeonhole myself and say like senior living placement, because there's a lot of ways I can go with my business, and I want people to call me no matter what they need, and I want to help. Like, you know, the first year that I did this, I was like, rather than set any type of financial goal, let me just set a goal for like how many families do I touch, like help. And I did like a paper chain, and I would post it. You know how you're allowed to post on the community pages like 1st and 15th? I would post every 1st and 15th, like, here's how long my chain is. Here's how long my chain is. Then I'd like wrap it around myself. Here's my chain. And that was, I needed that because I needed a visual, but that was like a really good way to get the community almost like invested in.
Yes.
They're like, oh, I
yes.
can send anybody to Allie, and like, she just wants to help. It doesn't matter. Like, she's not going to charge, and all of that. You know, everything I do is free of charge for my clients. So the way my business is structured is that I partner, like I contract with all the senior living communities in our area. They pay me if somebody moves in and I'm like their referral. So everything else I just do for free. And I think of that as like good karma marketing. So when somebody calls me, they never see an invoice from me at all. Sometimes people are suspicious when like that's the model. They're like, well, but then how do you make money? And I've tried to be as transparent about it as I can, but still it's like, since people don't know that that's a possibility, that's one of the biggest hurdles that I fight, is that people are like, well, there must be a catch, and there just isn't. Like, there just isn't. So I even have it. Sometimes people are like, well, then we must be paying more for the communities that if we use you. And I have it written in my contract that a community cannot charge more because they're working with me. And in fact, most of the time I can get them like a reduction. Like, a lot of times things are flexible and people don't know that. So I'm like, I don't mind asking. You know, we go in and we say, listen, they want to move in, but it's like $300 more a month than the community down the road, and they like that one too. What can you do? And sometimes they come back and say, oh, we can match it. So
Yeah, that's
anyway,
awesome.
that's most of what I do is senior living placement. But again, people call me thinking I'm all sorts of things, and I'm like thrilled to help no matter what it is.
What was the final straw for leaving your corporate job and starting your own business? See, when we were at the park, I thought you had kind of already thought about it because you knew you wanted to start having children.
Yes, and that was totally part of it. Like, I would come home and I'd feel number one, frustrated with like the constraints of working at the community level, but also I was like, there's no way this is going to work for how I picture myself being a mother too. And we had talked about having kids for a while. We're up here in Pennsylvania, and our families are not. So my parents are snowbirds. They're half the year at Delaware beaches, half the year in Florida. And my husband's parents are half the year in Maryland and half the year in Florida as well. So it was like, we're not going to have family here. And I was raised by a stay-at-home mom and kind of pictured that for me. But I was like, but financially, that's not going to work for us. So how can I hack this?
Yes.
And so that was 100% a component of it. I think as far as like the straw, I don't really know. I think, you know how they say, like, if you're going to quit something, quit on a good day.
Yeah.
I know that I did that on a good day. I had a day where I had 8 tours, which is like way high. Like, if you get 2 a day in a community, you're pretty good. I had 8 tours that day. It was the most I'd ever had in my entire career. And I was like, I'm still, even though I'm touring every people in this community every moment of this day, I'm still going to drive home and feel like they're watching to make sure I move enough people in, or they're like, you know, I was slimy and I had to sell something that I didn't believe in. And that is not it.
It just wasn't filling what you needed to be filled on the inside, because it sounds like you said you just knew that there were other places that fit better for people.
Yeah.
And because you couldn't help them in the way that was like true to you, it just wasn't feeling right.
And I kind of was like, in my head, I couldn't picture, even if the ethics were there for me, I couldn't picture the schedule working for how I wanted to mother. Because if in that role, it's like you're there 9 to 5, but also if somebody wants a tour at 6:30, you got to make that work. They want a tour on a weekend, you got to come in. And those sales directors are awesome. I think most sales directors in senior living communities are in it for the right reasons, believe in their product, and really care about the families that they work with. But that's a tough schedule and my husband works, like construction hours. So he leaves early in the morning. He does get out a little bit earlier usually, but not always. And sometimes he has a job in Maryland that he's driving up. So that was kind of like off the table. So it was going to have to be me. And I'm like, I just don't think, and like, there are moms that can, but for me, I wasn't picturing my motherhood being dropping my kids off with someone else and then going to a job that I felt like wasn't ethically what I, wasn't doing it for me. So
if you're not going to be able to spend the time with your kid, you have to be doing something that you absolutely love.
Absolutely.
And it was kind of like a lose-lose.
Yes. And there is something too about, flexing the muscle of what you do for work is like so awesome. So sometimes I picture how nice it would be to like go to a 9 to 5 and be that person for 8 hours. Right now, I get to be that person here, and I get to be that person when I'm on calls with clients and at their houses and stuff. But then as soon as I'm back, I have to change my uniform and be mom, and that's tough. Like the switching is tough. But for me, I was like, this has to happen now because I can't start this business pregnant. I definitely can't start this business with a kid. I need to build this first, establish it, and then we can talk. So
man, I wish I thought like that, because I didn't start my business till.
Well, also, like, I have to give so many props to my husband because he was so supportive. He was like, okay, we're doing this. Let's figure this out. Like, we can make this work. And you know how it is. Like when you first start, it's like, well, when am I going to see the first check? And it took like 4 or 5 months probably to like lay the groundwork, get the contracts, establish my credibility, and get clients that were like actually moving their love. Like that cycle was about, I think, 5 months or so, which is in the scheme of things relatively short. But for 5 months, you're like, is this going to work? Is this going to work? And it did. But it was like, you just had to keep the faith, and it helps when you have a partner. If I was a single person, and wanted to have a kid, it would be a lot harder. I can lean on the second income of my husband and the support of him. Yeah, right. Yeah. So I left there in 2018 to start the business. And so I had like a year and a half under my belt by the time COVID hit. And COVID, like March, what was that? Early March, the world shut down, and I found out I was pregnant April 3rd. So that was like an interesting time, but honestly, it was great because not only was I like, okay, now I have to shift this business into like, how am I going to do this while I'm also a mother? With the confines of like working from home because of COVID, I had to learn ways to adapt it anyway. So it was, I hate to say good timing, because obviously there's no good timing with with COVID, but it was because it forced me to be creative and be like, okay, well, how could I do this so that I can do this stuff from home, and get creative. So
I think COVID, even though it was a horrible thing and everything, like the world shutting down and everything, I feel like it kind of helped people discover things about themselves and start new businesses. And if they weren't flexible before, they found out that they had to be flexible or game over.
Right. I think it's shown us too that what we thought was like being productive isn't. I think people view productivity a little bit differently now too, because so many people are like, no, why do I have to go to an office? Or no, why do I have to work 9 to 5 if I can get it done in, 3 or 4 hours a day? And I'm glad for that. And I'm also glad that not even really for how other people view it, but for how it forced me to do it, because I used to wake up just like I would when I worked my 9 to 5, get dressed, leave, and not come back. I was like, I'm going to be at communities. I'm going to be networking. And I kind of had to do that to get this business going at first, to get my name out there and meet everybody and stuff. But with COVID, it was like, oh, okay, we're not going to do that. So we'll do virtual networking. We'll do, like, how can I add value to people while I'm stuck at home? So yeah, I think you're right. I think there was like an element of it that was good for especially like entrepreneurship and even kind of motherhood.
Yeah. How do you mesh entrepreneurship and motherhood together?
Oh,
I mean, I guess what's your day look like as an entrepreneur mom?
that is such a good question. Every day is different, but majority of my day is spent in mom mode. Like, most of the work that I do most days happens during nap time or before he wakes up or after he wakes up. Because of my husband's schedule, it's and the proximity of where he works. If I need to leave and go on a tour with a client, I can. But most of what I do, emailing, calling clients, meeting with clients, Zooming with clients is done when Joey is sleeping because he's home with me all the time. That'll change in the fall when he goes to preschool, and I'm so looking forward to that. But it is challenging. There are days where I'm like, I'm tired, but I need to get up because I have to send that report over to that family or whatever it might be. But there have been, I'm lucky too, that a lot of my work is like preliminary first steps through email. So I can do some of
Yeah.
that at the playground. And like, shout out to Sunny Day Play Cafe. Like, I don't know this past year how I could have done so much work without them. Like, shout out, because I can take my laptop there and Joey just plays and I get so much done. But like, yeah, most of my day is child focused. And then during his naps, his sleeping, and when my husband gets home is when I get all my work done.
Yeah, I mean, for people that aren't local, Sunny Day Play
Oh
Cafe
yeah, I should
just
have said
opened up in October, and it's like this indoor play center for kids up to age 8 or 10, I think,
I
and
don't know. Yeah.
half of it has, like, tables and, a high bar so parents can
That's where
bring
I
their
just like set up there. I got my laptop. I bring our snacks. He comes and checks in every 20 minutes or so, and I can see where he is. He's playing nicely, and I can get so much done.
Yeah.
So
So that's
grateful for
like a
them.
way that you mom hacked
Yeah,
as a
yeah, you have
business
to.
owner. It's
Yeah.
amazing. So I guess you started your business. Well, where am I going with this? Okay, here's where I'm going with this. Ah, coffee while we're interviewing. um, so as an entrepreneur mom, we experience motherhood a little bit differently than stay-at-home moms. They have their own experiences. 9 to 5 moms have their own experiences. What do you think is the beauty of being an entrepreneur mom?
Oh, well, I think two things. Like, number one is that I think if I see glimpses into what it's like to be a stay-at-home mom because I am home with him all the time. And the hardest part of that for me is that you have to be this sounds obvious, but like, you are mom all the time. And up until 2020 when he was born, that was not who I was. That is a new version of myself. And I like being that version, but I miss the old one. And if you're at home with your children, I have to imagine that it's lonely, and like, not just lonely, but you miss her. You miss who you used to be. You don't get to be that person. And like, we spend up until we have our children, we spend all this time like refining our skill set and our knowledge and the like expertise of certain things, whatever we've decided to focus on. And when I get to go out and like go to a client's house and do an assessment or like meet with a family, that flow, like the flow state, it is so nice to be her again for that time.
Does it, like,
Um,
energize you? Because I feel that I just am I love my kids, but after they're in daycare Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and if I do my real estate stuff mostly on those days, and
yeah.
at the end of that day, yeah, it's been a busy work day, but I feel energized, and I feel like I can give my kids more then because I
And
kinda
you feel valuable
fed
in a different
myself.
way. Yeah, like, especially when I'm able to meet with a family. Like, I go out and do tours with folks in communities, and then I go to homes and I like talk about different options and stuff. And when I'm feeling valuable to people in that way, it's yeah, it's energizing. And it's like, I had another mom ask me because I was telling her about some of the stuff I've been doing, and she was like, do you find that you're still interested in it? Because when you become a mom, so much of like what you consume is motherhood content. Like, we're on Instagram all the time and we're reading things about kids, and so much of what you think about, just your constant thoughts, are about your kid and motherhood and parenting. She was like, do you find that you're still interested in like in dementia care and senior living? And I was like, that's such a good question. And I was not sure for a while after I had Joey, because I was so inundated in it that it felt like, okay, I'm still on maternity leave almost. And I was like, well, when I get back there, am I back to that industry? Am I going to feel still interested? And I still do. Thank goodness. Like, I get really energized by it and I really care about it. And I really care about making it better. Like, I really, really think there's such a stigma with senior living and senior care and even just aging in general. And if I can make it my mission to just like put a little chip away at that, that is really important to me. And I think sometimes we can forget what it's like that other person existed and that she cared about things and was interested in other things. I took a certification course recently in the Montessori approach to dementia care, and it was so interesting. And I found myself like taking all these notes and being like, oh, I could do this. And oh, we could do this. And we could like, getting excited about opportunities in my field. And that's so nice to know that that's still there. So I think if you were a stay-at-home mom and you didn't still have that would feel really isolating. And on the other side of it, if I cannot imagine missing things with my kid. Like, we are together all the time, and that is so wonderful. And then there's like the fusion of the two. So like I listened to your number 1 episode, and you were talking about bringing your daughter on listing appointment or on like
show tour,
showing. Yeah,
tour.
thank you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, that's like a whole element of it that like I don't even think about. So Joey and I do the traveling lemonade stand over the summer, where we go to different senior living communities once a week and just hand out lemonade. And like I invite other moms and their kids to come with us. We do that all summer. We do Mother's Day cards, Father's Day cards. We did reverse trick-or-treating. We did Valentine's.
So cute. Such good ideas.
Like, there is nothing that has made me prouder of my child than watching him in a senior living community. He's like so unfazed and excited and gregarious. Like there's nothing better. And he's a little boy, so like, and his dad works in construction, so I see all the time how he's interested in what daddy does. But when I take him to a community and he's like excited to talk to the residents and make people happy, that is like the best. So we have this interesting opportunity as mothers and entrepreneurs that we can exemplify for our kids, and not just even exemplify, but like bring them into that and show them like, no, you can actually make a job for yourself, and you can follow what your passion is and turn it into something that you do for your life. And that's a really rare and awesome opportunity to give our children. So yeah.
Oh my goodness. I can't believe that we have been chatting for almost 40 minutes.
Sorry.
No, it's amazing. But right now we're going to hop to our 5 and 5. So I have 5 questions that I'm going to ask you. And the first one is, what does your ideal chill day look like?
Ooh, wonderful. So perfect timing, because Mother's Day, Sunday. This has been my tradition for the past however many Mother's Days I've been a mother, is that I have breakfast with my boys, with my husband and my son. And then I'm like, see ya. And I just spend the whole day by myself out shopping. I take myself to lunch. I've always said like, oh, maybe I'll get my nails done. But then there's like another TJ Maxx and I'm like, I think I'll go there instead. Just like following my own bliss all day long and then returning home and dinner's already made. That is like my ideal chill day. And probably like maybe work in there a few cups of coffee, maybe a walk at Longwood, or even just like some people watching along the way. But yeah, just like alone. And I think that's what your cousin said too, was that like the day is alone.
Yes.
We need that.
Yeah. Oh, I started doing that my past 2 birthdays, and it's been amazing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Also, I love how like the common thread of these episodes now is coffee for us entrepreneur moms. Like,
I mean, we don't run on like hopes and dreams.
So what are you currently reading or listening to? Like, are you a reader, or do you like to listen to podcasts? And What are you listening to?
I'm more of a podcaster than a reader. Right now I reread The Secret. Do you know The Secret? That
No.
book, The Secret. It's also a movie, and it came out back in like, gosh, 2007 or something. It's about the law of attraction. So I reread that every year, and I'm rereading that now. And one of my favorite books is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You've heard of that, right? Well, there's this other one this like variation on that called The 10 Habits of Highly Effective Mothers. So I'm reading that right now. But yeah, most of the time I'm in the car listening to podcasts, and Armchair Expert is like my go-to if there's anything new on there.
What's that about? Armchair Expert.
You don't know Armchair Expert?
I've never heard of it.
Oh man. Okay, Maddie, when you got to. Dax Shepard. Like I can't even remember when it first came out, but I feel like it's like it has to be one of the top podcasts on like the charts or whatever. And they just interview celebrities. They interview so they have like a whole spin-off show called Experts on Experts that are like often psychologists or like all sorts of specialists. And it's just fascinating. They're like you. They're like down to earth, raw, no airs about them. They just have these like unfiltered conversations. And Dax Shepard, I didn't actually like him until I started listening to that. And I'm just like, he's so relatable and kind and means well and gets things out of people that he's just like so easy to talk to. I say that like I've talked to him, but like he talks to people so well that you just feel like, man, you're in the room with them. So, and they're long form podcasts. So they go like sometimes 2 hours. So I'll listen to one, I'll start it in the car. I'll finish it while I'm folding laundry. Sometimes I even listen in the shower, but that one, if there's a new episode of that I haven't listened to, that's usually one that's playing for me.
That's first. Nice.
Yeah.
I'll have to listen.
Oh,
Yeah.
you have to. You would love it.
Yeah, I'm sure I would.
Yeah.
What is your favorite app or tool that you can use as an entrepreneur mom or as one or the other?
Got it. Okay. I have the perfect one. So, and I started using this during COVID, and I'm sure maybe you use it or a lot of people use it, but I don't know if you've thought about using it for business. It's Marco Polo. And I don't know if I'm like dating myself to say that I use Marco Polo a lot, because I feel like maybe it's something that like people used a while ago. I didn't learn about it until 2020 when like we were all using it, friends were using it and stuff. And I started making Marco Polos with my friends and my sisters and some family members and stuff, just to like, basically, if people don't know what it is, it's like it allows you to leave a video message back and forth. And I think different people use it different ways, but in general, I use it with my friends to leave like 20-minute messages. Like, here's what we're doing today, and here's what our week has been. And I just love it. I feel like I get to catch up with people, but like when it works for me, I don't have to be like, yeah, let's call and talk and be beholden to the phone. That's hard when you have a lot going on. So anyway, I was using it all the time for friends, and I was like, wait a minute, I could totally use this with clients. And so I've started using it when people fill out my client info form, they check whether or not they want to do it that way. But it's been great because my clients are busy too. And it lets us connect on a different level. And also because I, as you can tell, talk a lot, I can explain things to people much more detail than I could on a voicemail or even sometimes over the phone. And if it's more than one decision maker, like 2 sisters are making decisions for a mom, one sister can send my message to the other sister, and then they have it if they need to re-listen to it. So that's worked really, really well, because I can kind of put all my thoughts out there, explain what I mean. People will call me and be like, what does Medicaid cover? And I can go through the whole explanation, send it to them on a Marco Polo. They can see my face, so it's a little bit more personal, but also they have it then, and they can share it or send it or rewatch it if they need to. So Marco Polo, and it's free. I pay for a premium subscription so that you get a few added features, but you can download the app and use it for free.
Yeah, I never heard of that. That's really cool.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
I will make you a Marco Polo.
Yeah, yay. So what is the song you blast the shit out of if entrepreneur life is just a little bit too much that day?
You sent me this and I was like, how am I going to narrow this down to just one? So I think I have like 2 different vibes that I want to go with if I'm allowed. So you know that song Big Energy?
Yes.
I really like that song. So that is like, I'll do the edited version if Joey is with me, but like that is definitely one that amps me up. But there's also this song by Meg Mac called Roll Up Your Sleeves. And it's just like very like feel good mom, entrepreneur, like you got this kind of energy. So I think I like alternate between the 2 of those, but those those would be my two go-to.
Did you listen to the Big Energy remix with like Mariah Carey in the beginning?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the one. I didn't even know there was one that didn't have Mariah Carey, because that's the one that I have on repeat here, because it's the same as Fantasy. Remember Mariah Carey? It's like that same. So like, oh yeah. It feels like it takes me back a little bit. Like,
we're not old.
No, we're not. But like, I can just picture myself roller skating to it. So.
Oh no, I agree with you. Like, we are kind of old. Like, I still feel like I graduated from high school yesterday, but I think it was like 15 years ago.
Oh my gosh. I had my birthday this past Friday, and one of my friends sent me a picture, and she was like, happy 15th anniversary of your 21st birthday. And I was like, that's just cruel. That just hurt a little.
Oh, gotta love it.
Yeah.
All right. Last question.
Yeah.
What is some advice that you can give a struggling entrepreneur mom?
Okay. Two things. So number one, my favorite movie of all time, You've Got Mail. And I feel like I can't be alone in that. There's gotta be other people, if they're listening, that love that movie. And she says, Meg Ryan says in that movie, whatever else anything is, it ought to begin by being personal. And I have that on my vision boards, because I think that's the key. And that's like what we said at the beginning. It's like, if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to figure out like, how do I get this going? Or how do I like revamp it or re-energize it? It has to begin by being personal. If it's not, there's nothing there. So that's the first one. And then the second one is just to remember that entrepreneurship is waves. It's not a climb, it's waves. So when you start to feel like, oh, the phone hasn't rung for a while, as soon as you feel that way, the phone rings off the hook.
Or as soon as you leave on vacation, you get bombarded.
That's it. It's all ebbs and flows. So people will always ask me like, how's business been? And it's either crazy or dead. It's rarely, sometimes it's even, but like, you have to remember and just trust and have faith that if it's slow, it's about to be fast, and act as though it is fast, So if there's no one calling, that's your time to plant more seeds. Like, you call somebody and say like, how's business going for you? Support other people, like invest in other people in your community, because that's the way that things grow, is that just like you give, and that's how you get. So I think that's, if there's anybody out there that's an entrepreneur and that is struggling, just stay authentic and just stay steady. That's all you can do.
You nailed that. That is true.
Thanks.
So this was an amazing episode. I'm so happy we got to sit and chat. And I mean, I think I'm going to see you again next week at one of our meetings.
Yep,
yes. So if anyone had questions or they wanted to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, they however you want. I'm on social media. My company is just at Brandywine Concierge on Facebook and Instagram. I'm at Mazza Allie. And my website is brandywineconcierge.com. So there's a contact form on there too. And then my email is just Allie, ALLIE at brandywineconcierge.com.
All right. Awesome. And I'll tag you on everything so people can find you.
Cool.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
And everyone, I can't wait until you listen to our episode after this one. So make sure you come back. All right.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining this episode of Badass Mother Hustler. If you loved this episode as much as we did, and it left you feeling inspired and empowered, give us a quick like and subscribe, and we'll invite you back to our next episode. And be sure to share us on your socials and visit our Instagram, Badass Mother Hustler Podcast. We'll see you next time.